Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Asha Brown from We Are Diabetes. Welcome to your Recovery Toolkit. Today, we are chatting with my very good friend, an amazing DOC extraordinaire, Daniele Hargenrader, aka the Diabetes Dominator. And since I don't have this memorized, I'm actually just going to read her bio because it's too impressive to skip over. So she is a diabetes coach, nutritionist, health, wellness, and fitness expert, best-selling author, international speaker, and certified personal trainer. He helps individuals from all walks of life to think, eat, and move in ways that allow them to achieve a quality of health and life they previously thought unattainable. She is presented at Fortune 100 companies and top-ranked hospitals and has dedicated herself to teaching people how to live the life that they imagined they could have through optimal health and our power of choice. Daniele, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Asha. It's lovely to be here.
Well, I feel like your bio, I mean, it definitely offers kind of it shows how much experience you've had working with people. But before we get into how you work with others and some of the advice you're going to have for us today about this specific group of people and exercise, I'd love for you to take a few moments to kind of share into what you do and a little bit of why I personally value your expertise because of the background that you have.
Sure. So I will try to make it as short as possible. So at the age of 9, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes and no internet back then. So I'm so thrilled that we now have this wonderful resource where we connect with each other, and it makes everything a lot more, I don't feel so alone. So for everyone out there, I'm so glad that you're watching. But yeah, so then a few years later, after just trying to get back into a normal life after being diagnosed, my father passed away very suddenly. It was basically from one week to the next. He had a heart attack. And so that was the day after my 12th birthday, and that spurred me. So then the diabetes had kind of been compounding, the realizing that this wasn't going anywhere, and also then having my father pass away, it kind of just pushed me over the edge into a very deep depression that was fueled by binge eating addiction. It was a very serious issue, had me at 200 plus pounds by the time I was 13. Also, it had me using food as the thing that comforted me. It was the thing that I went to when I felt bad, which was every day. I did not omit insulin, which I have talked with Asha about before, as I didn't know about it. And I'm grateful beyond all get out that I didn't know what that was, because I'm sure I would have done it, because being obese was very uncomfortable for me. So I would, my mom worked full time after my dad passed away, and then I would come home after school, stop off at the store that was right by my house, get all kinds of food. I would hide it in my room, under my bed, anywhere. So in between the time my mom was still at work and before she got home, and when I was home alone, and then after she went to bed, pretty much every day, that was just like free for all, eating everything and anything. So after spending my entire teenage life obese, and by the time I hit around 18 or 19, and then realizing that, okay, this isn't really who I want to be. I was unhappy with the way my adult life was beginning, and I said, I don't want this. So I decided to change. I mean, it really wasn't just, overnight I lost, 65 pounds. And no, it was a very long and drawn out progression where I had mentors, and I went through a lot of personal development, read a lot of books. I got my degree in nutrition science because I thought if I can learn about the thing that's going to keep me healthy, then I can have more power and feel more empowered with it. And so that turned into nutrition. And then I went to personal training school, which is a whole other story, because exercise was completely foreign to me until I was in my 20s, 19, 20. I just didn't feel like I was athletic. And then later on in my life, I decided that it didn't matter.
Look at you now.
Yeah, and I was going to fix that somehow. And so, yeah, so it's kind of a shortened, sporadic version of the story, but it kind of gives some of my background.
Perfect. Some of the things that I feel like I should just highlight for the specific audience watching this is that although you didn't omit insulin, you definitely had the eating disordered behaviors that are so common with, the We Are Diabetes clients, the hoarding of food, the using food for not feeling things. And every time you tell your story to me, or I hear it being told by you, I can't imagine the trauma that you went through with the loss of a parent. And I know how close you and your dad were, and it just hurts me to hear it. But it's very common for people who have that kind of trauma to not know, especially when they're young, to not know how to cope. And so much like I tell everybody else, and as you know yourself, it's nobody's fault that these things happen. And we reach for addictions when we don't know what else to do. Like, we mentally and physically don't know how else to handle what we're going through. And that's commonly why an eating disorder appears and then manifests. And the other thing too is that it's interesting to hear that you were very new to exercise up until, you started reinventing yourself and healing yourself, because a lot of the We Are Diabetes group of people are in that boat themselves. They don't know how to approach exercise, and they all they know is that your blood sugars drop, and then you want to binge when you're low, so then they avoid it. So that's kind of what we're going to try to tackle, and it's impossible to do it in one interview with you, but I want to start addressing some of that. And so I guess I'll start with this first question, and you can answer it however you wish, because I know there'll be a lot of answers. But if someone who has committed to recovery, and let's say they're almost always taking their insulin, they're committing to testing, they're in a pretty good place. I mean, I don't know whether they're doing inpatient or outpatient, whatever, but they're kind of at a balanced place. They're medically stable. And working on their A1C. If an individual like that is motivated to start a workout plan, what are the main things that individual would need to keep in mind as they start to think about working out and developing some sort of routine?
That's a loaded question. I know. Well, okay. So the first thing that I would think about immediately, so before I do anything, one of the first things that I like to think about is, what is my outcome? Why am I motivated to exercise in the first place? What outcome am I after? Really take the time to identify that. Maybe get a journal. I don't know if journaling is part of the recovery process but I'm pretty sure that it is.
I highly recommend it. So
yeah.
Most people choose to.
Yeah. So write down why you want to work out, and then as you begin to realize what's underneath it, which is great, it's wonderful and healthy, and I think everybody who's capable should do it because it's wonderful for your body, but know why you want to do it. I would say, because if you have things come up, like especially when you're in recovery, it's like, well, I hate this part of my body and I really want to fix it. If those are the words that are coming out, we might need to take a step back and understand that we don't want to exercise because we hate our body. We want to exercise because we love our body, and that it deserves the wonderful things that happen when we do work out, all the great endorphins and all the wonderful things that happen. So it has to be, go ahead. Say that again.
Oh, I was going to say better insulin control, just, having the circulation and whatnot. We all know there's lots of benefits to exercise, but I love what you said about the fact that we need to avoid using exercise in recovery as a way to obliterate parts of our body we don't like, or to use it as any sort of a purging of calories or feelings, going into exercise to, punish ourselves in any sort of way. This is a loving, not a punishment.
100%, yes. And the second thing I would probably say is that you should not try to do something absolutely out of the question right off the bat. You should set a low goal. So if you don't work out at all and you're in recovery, whether it's inpatient or outpatient, life is going to happen. Life is going to happen when you're out of whatever situation you're right now. But the thing is that don't say, well, now I'm ready and I'm motivated, I'm going to work out 5 days this week. And now I'm not saying that you don't feel like that you want to do that, or I'm trying to negate the motivation that you have to do that, but it's not necessarily a realistic goal. And the way that we feel successful and continue to feel motivated and continue to feel successful is to set smaller goals. And then once we attain those goals, then we can add on. So say you're never working out and you just want to get into it. Say, I'm going to do some type of exercise 2 times this week. And that's it. And if you do more, that's also fine, but 2 times, and then pat yourself on the back, celebrate the fact that you followed through, you honored your commitment, and then move forward. And if that was something that you didn't struggle with, then say, okay, next week I'm going to go with 3 and see how that goes. But don't shoot for the moon. because that is self-sabotage. And that's another way that we, especially those of us in recovery, can make ourselves feel bad. Even though it's subconscious, we can consciously know that it's happening. So don't set yourself up for failure. Right. Set yourself up for success.
And it's definitely hard, I think, for people, for anyone who's had some sort of addiction, especially an eating disorder, to get out of that all or nothing thinking. Like, we either want to go full force and just go to CrossFit 5 days a week, you know, and do everything perfect, or we do nothing. And so it really is an exercise in personal development to set manageable goals that maybe we don't have a fear that we can reach. Maybe we know that's not going to be a problem, but we have to achieve small goals and see those through before we keep adding on more commitments. And yeah. I love that you highlight that. That's a huge important thing. So back to what I was mentioning about the lows. What is your advice to someone who is very afraid and very anxious about the concept of going low size?
Okay, so this is going to be a two-parter too, and I'll try to make it succinct. So the first thing, and this is one thing that was a big problem for me, and I say a problem because I used to, and all of this you're going to see is leading back to our emotional and mental state and how this interacts with everything else. So for me, when I went low back in the days where I was binging and all of that other stuff, I would see having a low blood sugar as an opportunity to have a treat. That, and I use the word treat very loosely because I don't like that. I don't even like that term for human. I think it's more of like an animals get treats type thing, and we're kind of a little bit above that. All humans, all of us. So what I did was I created what I call a low blood sugar standard operating procedure, and standard operating procedure comes from my husband who's in the military. So that's just, but that's a thing. So a low blood sugar is a medical emergency, period. Like if an asthmatic person starts having an asthma attack, they don't sit there and wonder where their inhaler is. They probably know exactly where it is. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course, I'm sure that's happened in history, but most likely that person, they know it's like do or die. They're in a dire situation and they know where their inhaler is. Like, okay, no thought process happens. It's just, here's my inhaler. That's what I've set up, and that's what I teach people when I work with them, is about having a standard operating procedure for low blood sugar. You have either glucose tablets, we've talked about honey stinger gel packets or juice boxes, whatever it is, something, yeah, exactly. Gel packets, whatever it is, but something that's not Skittles or something that you feel inclined to continue eating. And
your medical treatment for the low.
Yes, exactly. And that goes everywhere. And that's the part where it's a standard operating procedure. So you set alarms once a week. Maybe it's every Friday, every Saturday. So you put these things in your bedroom, in your bathroom, in your car, in your backpack, in your purse, in your gym bag, in your office cubby, in literally in your best friend's house, your mom's house. I don't care. Anywhere you spend time ever, you have a stockpile of those things in there. Yes, it's going to take time the first time you need to stock it. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of time. But anytime we want to change ourselves, we're going to have to put forth effort that we didn't previously put forth to get new results. So you have that stocked up. You have your alarm once a week. You check all of those places, make sure you have it there. And it just becomes part of your life. But what that does is that you no longer have to have a thought process when you are essentially, when your brain is starving for the fuel that it needs to function. You don't need to have a thought process. It's here's my stuff. There's where it is, wherever it is. And then you begin to have, so that's the first thing. So you have that when you're exercising. You're not worried. If you do go low, you know you have yourself stocked up. That's first. The second thing is that you have to know that it is going to happen. It's not the end of the world, and that it's not a reason to stop doing what you're doing. So that's the other part of it is, so you can mitigate those things from happening a little bit by, if you are going to do cardiovascular exercise, you can very much try to plan it around a time where you don't have any insulin on board, because insulin is the thing that makes us go low. So if we eliminate insulin, we're eliminating the main factor that allows our blood sugar to go low in the first place. That's why I kind of recommend, if you can, not having any insulin on board. If you have a pump, you'll know how much is on board, or if you've injected fast acting in the last 3 to 4 hours, then you know you have some insulin on board. Try to do your exercise when you have no insulin going on, and that very well may be a big deal in not getting as many lows. But then the bottom line is, it still may happen. It's not a big deal. Take the time to recover, and don't let that be the reason why you're beating yourself up. It's just, that's not a reason to beat yourself up. We all go low during exercise. There's no magic wand that can be waved and say, here's the solution to all those during exercise, because again, that's not real. So let's not shoot for something that's not real and then feel disappointed when we can't achieve it, because that's, again, going back to that.
All of your words are just music to my ears. Oh my gosh, I just got so excited listening to you. So I'm like, yes, yes, yes. So backtrack what you said. First of all, let me clarify that you're eliminating insulin on board for this exercise purpose only, everybody. That's all. That's the only thing we meant there. And it is actually very key. You really can't, I mean, if you're testing and you're rage bolusing and then the next hour you're like, I'm going to take a walk, it's just going to end badly. It's going to be a bad situation. And then you're going to be angry at your diabetes, at yourself. And that's going to build up the resentment of, trying to move. But I loved what you said about stockpiling everywhere, about having a low treatment, a standard operating procedure plan. I mean, I have thrived so much more when I now know this is what I use to treat my lows. This is what I use. Nothing else. This is what I use to treat my lows, and foods that I crave that are treats, or I call it good food. I eat that when my blood sugar is stable and I'm cognizant and aware, so I can enjoy what I eat. The other thing that you said that I find so key is that how can we remember everything? We can't. That's ridiculous. We're human beings and we have a life. Set an alarm once a week. Just go through it, get it over with, because then it's out of your mind. You don't have that panic and anxiety. That's just such good advice. Amazing advice. So, and along with that, then when you said about finding a time that you would want to exercise where you don't have insulin on board, would you then recommend the morning time to be a good time for exercise?
I always say in general, the best time to exercise is when you're going to do it. And that's not meant in a flippant or cavalier way. It really is like, some people will really want to work out in the morning, but then they find that time and time again, they can't get themselves out of bed. And some people just pop up like a spring. And so each person has a different makeup. So, but yes, obviously when you wake up, if you're fasting, meaning obviously you haven't eaten and you're not injecting, that is a great time. Or I have met many people who maybe they eat breakfast and then they'll do it before lunch, or they'll have lunch and then they'll do it before dinner. Right. So where it's coming up to a meal, or it's been a few hours after a meal, I think just kind of try to put it in sync, whichever way works best with your schedule and that you feel you can stick to. That's probably the best.
I like that answer too, because I've read, from different people offering advice that you should always work out in the morning because that's the best time. And I like what you're saying about the fact that you need to find what works for your life, your lifestyle. Look for that window of time where you don't have insulin on board. And, perhaps there's a meal coming up after that. So if you get a little low, then there you go. You start eating your lunch or something like that. It's fantastic. So along with that, if you're willing to share, I bet a lot of people are interested in what your current, or maybe what one of your favorite types of exercise routines are. I mean, are you powerlifting right now? Are you a cardio person? Like, what do you like to do for exercise?
So I have found over the years that I've gotten into exercise that I go on cycles. And then I do the same thing with foods. Like, I'll eat the same thing for like 3-4 months, and then I'll be like, I'm tired of that, and I'll switch to something else. I kind of do the same thing with exercising. I'm almost always doing some kind of weightlifting. However, currently for the last month, I haven't been. I've been doing a ton of Zumba and yoga. So I am like, and then I've also, now that right now it's almost fall-ish weather where we are, and then I like to go out jogging. However, you can't get me near a trail outside for jogging when it's hot out or when it's freezing cold out. I have no interest, so then I don't run. So I guess maybe it's like cyclical with the weather, I don't know, but now that it's getting cooler out, I'm going to go back to CrossFit this month. So I just can't stand to do like really heavy lifting weights, because CrossFit gyms don't have air conditioning. That's just a staple. And so it's like 100 heat index plus, and then they're like, lift all this weight, and I'm like, nah, I'll just go to Zumba. So I mean, I'm still doing something and I feel good, and I'm not, and I don't beat myself up like, oh, you haven't lifted weights. It's like, no, I'm gonna lift weights next month, and I'm gonna do Zumba and yoga this month. And I think that we have to allow ourselves to be more elastic instead of like rigid and hard and plastic and saying like, this is my exercise routine. if that works for you, awesome. Like, I'm not saying, but if you are in that place where you're like, I kind of feel like doing something else, I just want to take walks for the next couple weeks, that's how I feel. Don't feel any other way about it. Just let it happen and keep moving. Now, just maybe examine it a little further if you're just stopping completely. But if you just want to move along back and forth to different things, do what makes you happy. I'm a Zumba, yoga, jogging, CrossFit, weightlifting. Doesn't matter. Like, whatever I feel like.
And important thing too is that even if you're not like lifting weights in a weightlifting atmosphere, there's still ways to do strength training. Some people may not know that yoga builds so much muscle, as you and I both know. Even Zumba, your legs get crazy strong. So it's moving your body, and as you have mentioned, you find ways to stay interested and interactive in the choices that you're making. So it's almost, I think it's a benefit to kind of try a couple different things and have different seasons of exercise, because your body doesn't get bored, and your brain doesn't get bored.
Exactly.
With that being said, if you're not sore after a workout, does that mean that you didn't work hard enough? Or can you explain from your personal trainer experience what sore muscles mean? Like, I think a lot of people think that means they worked out enough and they've done a good job.
Okay, so this is another, the fitness industry is just like any other industry. There's a million perspectives and ideas on things. But from my own perspective, I don't think that being sore is the goal. Now, if you are sore after a workout, also, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. However, if you're so sore that you are physically unable to move or perform your normal daily things like washing your hair or like lifting your child, then that might be an indicator that the workout that you did is too advanced for you right now, and you could do a similar version of it, but you might want to tone it down a little bit. So I guess the short answer is no. Muscles hurting is not the indicator of you having done the right or good enough workout. And if you're not sore, it doesn't mean that you didn't have a good workout. So why you're sore is because, if you're doing resistance training and you say weight training, I just call it resistance training because push-ups are resistance training, squats are resistance training. You're building muscle, so using your own body weight against itself, that's weightlifting. We are weight. So when you're doing that, being sore is again not the goal. And I actually just lost my train of thought there. I was going somewhere with that because I backtracked. But the point is that no, it's not the goal. And my pump is beeping, and I don't know if you can hear that. I could not have timed this. I can't.
I just checked my so it's good. So you do diabetes. What I was going to say, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to point out, because I want to highlight what you just said, is that it is really important to remember that resistance training can be your own body weight. Like, you don't have to belong to a gym. You don't need to even own weights. There are ways to do resistance training. It's just, you just use your own body, planks and push-ups. Like, there doesn't need to be an obstacle of, I can't afford to go work out in all the environments I'm seeing around. Like, you can use resistance training anywhere. It takes being creative or thinking outside the box in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you could just go to YouTube, and there are probably thousands of at-home, no equipment needed resistance training workouts.
Well, and have some too with some great tips. So I'll just plug, I want to plug right now, Diabetes Dominator, all of the amazing videos that you have on your YouTube channel. You have interviews with just the most inspiring, incredible people of the DOC. Every single one is really fun to watch and just highlights all the different types of people that we have in this amazing network. And you also have all of these wonderful tidbits of advice for living with diabetes. So I really encourage people watching this to take some time, subscribe to Danielle's channel, and take a look at her videos, because they just have a wealth of information, a lot of stuff kind of like on this topic. So I think maybe the last question I will do for today is, what, and this, of course you can't answer this for everyone because we're all individuals, but what type of exercise would you recommend to someone who says they hate exercise?
I would, two things. I would say go for walks, and actually try to go for walks outside. No matter where you live, even if it's in an urban setting, like I live in Philadelphia, like not in the suburbs of Philadelphia, not like in like some city that's like, no, I live in Philadelphia. It's very urban, but Philadelphia has a huge park system. Actually, I think it's the biggest urban park system in the whole world, but that's another story. But find a place that's outside, maybe that has grass or somewhere where you can just be in nature alone with your thoughts, because that way you're just moving and you could be thinking, or you could be listening to a book, or you could be like whatever, doing a whole bunch of things, and you don't have to perceive it as exercise. And the other one would probably be yoga. I mean, just because you know me, I'm not like an across the board, like this works for everyone. Everyone should do X. Like I'm very like, each person has their individual ebb and flow in life, and I need to find what works for them. But I believe with every part of my being that yoga is for everyone. I don't think there's any human being on this earth that cannot benefit from yoga, both because it's a physical exercise, but it's also an emotional exercise, and it helps you get stronger. I mean, I think other exercise helps you get stronger mentally as well, but yoga particularly has a focus on strengthening your mental state. So I think it's a really helpful thing to do.
Totally agree. And I love that attitude, because it is really true. I mean, our culture has kind of butchered yoga at this point, and everyone thinks they have to wear Lululemon pants and do like these crazy like arm balances. And it's not true, you guys. There's so much yoga out there. And you know, the one thing I learned from practicing and then eventually teaching yoga is that the central nervous system, you know, the way it can soothe all of these invisible things that we as type 1s really have to consider. I mean, you know, when your cortisol and stress levels go up, you have insulin resistance, and you can actually combat that with, you know, breathing and yoga. And I could go on forever about how much I love yoga. So we'll stop that. Danielle, thank you so much. I hope this kind of encourages everyone to take a look and start considering creating a plan for movement, because for me, it really was an integral part of me recovering strongly and starting to look at exercise as a gift to my body versus a punishment. And I think that your approach in working with your clients with exercise and just their personal development is absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for giving us some of your time today.
I couldn't be more happy to have been invited to be here, and thank you for putting this together. It's a great resource.